I'm Warwick Harvey. I'm going to be presenting today with Jay Moorman. He's our Director at Modena Infrastructure, our General Manager at Modena AEC, and the Non-Executive Director at Home Africa. Quick intro, we're going to be looking at what is digital transformation, the key enablers of business value propositions, the 4 Ds on which to base your digital transformation on, the 3 building blocks to build your digital transformation plan, and a quick discussion on what's next. I'm going to leave this on the screen and let it set in for a while. I thought it was a bit cheeky, but because I'm not doing product discussion, I thought I could have taken that, you know.
Whose quote is that from?
I don't know.
That guy.
I'm sure it was somewhere here and I didn't like the
virtual,
scale.
maybe.
I cropped it out.
Ronald Reagan.
So I'm going to hand over to Jay because I think Jay, with his experience in the digital transformation of many companies over the years, I think he's better suited to talk about this. And I will pop in with real world application and experience through the lack of digital transformation, because I never had, you know, the benefit of using digital tools in the industry. So Jay, over to you.
Thanks, Warwick. Hi, guys. So, I'll say I'll wing it because I can't read my notes. I have this beautiful speech with me, so let's see how it goes. The whole concept of digital transformation, or moving from an analog company to a digital company, you know, it's not just about technology. It's a socio-technological change. But there are so many aspects to it. Now, the problem is that tech companies, like you've experienced today, are really, really good at throwing stuff at you and saying this is the latest and greatest, etc., etc., and create this push for the product. But with all of this happening and the complex nature of doing a digital transformation, it is important to just slow down, you know, and have a level-headed approach as you go through this. I think it's key that the companies look at their strategy and the value that they have, and then from there decide what technology they need, and therefore create a pool for the technology. And what is critical to understand is you can't just take a piece of technology and just drop it in on a company. And so often that happens. I mean, I see some of my old colleagues here where when Revit first came out, it was like, this is this great tool and we're just going to put it in and everybody's just going to figure it out. You know, and adoption was lackluster, and you know, then the software didn't work and people went back to AutoCAD, and you know, that was the sort of, that's what happened, because it involves processes, people, and the tools. And you have to look at all of those things together when you start implementing something like this. And it helps to slow down to speed up. So just looking at digitization currently around the world, the latest figures, I think this was from PwC, if I'm right?
PwC taken on 2019.
So 2019, you know, they reckon, you know, the level of digitization in Europe, Middle East, and Africa was 30%, or they reckon in the next 5 years, it will go up to 71%. So that's quite a massive jump. I would like to know what the figure is now, post-COVID, because I think COVID was quite an enabler.
I think COVID has expedited that quite a lot.
Yeah, for that. However, our challenge in the construction industry, and again, this graph is quite old, it's 2014, but I don't think it's changed much, is the construction industry's productivity versus something like manufacturing. More productivity scale. And total economy productivity is there. So the more construction companies we speak to, we find out, you know, how they're struggling with adoption. We've always done it this way. We're going to continue doing it this way. It's worked. But it's well known that the construction industry worldwide is the most wasteful industry out there. If you look at the amount of waste that gets generated. I had a statistic the other day. It's, I think, 40% of the world's energy resources are being used by the construction industry right now. So it is very, very important to look at different ways, better ways. But as we go on this journey, you know, there's some key enablers to look at. How do we unlock that through technology? Now, the first one is obviously people. How do we enable our people through digital technology? Well, we've seen it. I think COVID was a classic case. We still needed to operate. We still had projects to deliver, and applying technology, people could work from anywhere. Again, focusing around people. But the next part is very, very important for me. That's process, and it's important here to have a quote here. Is don't buy the hype, buy the reality. So for me, it's important that as a company, when you start looking at, we want to start going digital completely as a company. First, evaluate what your current maturity is, and how open to adoption you are as a company. After that, you can now set clear targets of where you want to be within the next 5 years. Then the process is do a pilot project. Don't just roll it up. Do a pilot project, learn your lessons, look at from the pilot project what tools and what resources you need in order to roll it out. So learn your lessons small, learn fast, learn small. And from there, roll it out with good change management. And the last aspect to really take into consideration is operations. So many times IT is not part of the strategic conversation from a company. And IT spend doesn't align, and leadership don't want to adopt new technology. Specifically, the leadership's a little bit older. They're really adverse to adopting technology. But it is important that leadership understands the value of strategic IT and how IT generally can help the company move forward. It's not just the sending of emails or storing data. There's a lot more to it. And I think a key component here is the use of those things to discover what your competitive advantage is. What is it that makes your company unique and causes people to want to do business with you that cannot easily be copied? And that's a very difficult question to answer. I know I've been struggling it with our company for the last 5 years. I was trying to find out, what makes us unique? Because a competitive advantage is only there for as long as you're the only guy having it. And that's why I really, really like this quote. It's what destroys the ability to remain profitable as commoditization, not the competition. On our journey to this is, because of this complexity involved, there's actually a 4D approach that McKinsey and the consulting company recommends you follow. And it's almost overly simple, but we found so few of us actually do this. When we look at this 4D approach. And it's really to look at how can I extract value in whatever I'm going to do. And the first one is to discover. It's use the insights about your company to understand what your digital ambitions are. Develop a clear view of where it is that you add value and where it is that value is getting destroyed in your company due to the lack of a digital approach. And then from there, go, this is what we want to have out of moving forward with digital. The next part is then to design it. And again, here it's prototype that journey. But what is important is not to get stuck in just planning. It's important to move on a whole concept of a minimum viable product. You guys aware of a minimum viable product? It's get something that works as viable and then tweak it and better through iterations going forward. You all use software, and we all know the software is not always perfect, but it's a minimal viable product. That's the whole concept behind it. We've got so used to, there's an update coming up that makes it a bit better, this bug gets fixed, etc., etc. Using the same agile approach in rolling out new technology through pilot projects and learning. And then deliver. Now what's important here is to really look at, once you're going to start delivering this in your value chain, is to realize that you're going to need partners with you on the journey. Because if we look at construction, we have the client, we have the architect, we have the engineer, we have the construction company, we have the facilities manager, and then we have the client again at the end. These are all different parties that have to work together. And realize that you're not all going to be on the same level of digital adoption. And it's figuring out what partners do you want to get on board from a supplier base, from a vendor base, consultant base, that will help you navigate that process. help you with the change management that's going to occur. Because change management is a big factor that needs to be taken into account. Time and time again, we've seen where there was a big gung-ho as we roll out the project, and then change management doesn't take place. And typically what happens, which is the next slide, is that people start suffering from change fatigue. There's too much change happening. You know, they can't cope with all of that. You know, and this is where it's very, very important, is that to mitigate this, you need to focus on quick wins. You know, and find those low-hanging fruit as we roll this out. Another risk is security risk, something to consider. So as you decide maybe to move to the cloud, is how are you going to secure your data? How are you going to back up your data? It's not just a one solution that fits all. You need to look at all of those kind of things. And of course, in South Africa, we've got a financial risk. You know, a lot of our products are rand dollar based. So we have the risk of the rand dollar also playing into it. So how are you going to mitigate that? And it's just planning for that. Because unfortunately, we don't have a local solution that's not rand dollar based. So just realize that these are risks. And when you plan for those risks, you can control them as you move forward. I mean, I think the rand dollar depreciated about 20% since last year. So immediately, that's your cost that you have to take into account. That is a risk that's coming into play. All right, you want to jump in on yeah?
Sure, thanks, Jay. So, you know, when we look at the building blocks on how to build a digitalization plan, there's only three things that really matter. Your customers. Your customers are your end goal, because ultimately they pay the bills. So we need to look at the customer in mind and how are we going to adopt technology to better suit our customers' needs at the end of the day. And that discussion is different from project management to architecture to construction to bricklaying, you know, but that's a discussion that needs to happen. Because these are the people that are giving you the projects going forward. And if your customers are requiring the industry to start adopting BIM, we cannot say no. You know, BIM now, especially with some property development companies, is being mandated to be used on projects. If you're not adopting BIM with certain companies, they will not be using you going forward. So keep your clients in mind.
I think what's quite nice is we actually got a nice mix in the room. So we've got some clients, or let's say end users of the building, and we've got some architects, we've got some engineers, we've got some construction companies. It's really looking at how that handover happens, you know, and how can I satisfy the next person in this value chain better? And that's your end goal, and then working it backwards.
Reverse engineering.
We've got some clients, fortunate enough, I mean, our Revit skills in South Africa are some of the best in the world, so a lot of our clients are now doing a lot of work in the Middle East, where they're not the design company, but they're doing the construction drawings. And all of them has been mandated with ISO 19650 across the board. They just had to adopt. So trying to be internationally competitive, that is what's going to happen. And start looking at it, how are we going to implement it? It's not something that happens overnight. I see Matthew scratching his head because he's been through this. Hey Matthew. You know. Next one is process excellence. You know, is how am I going to run those processes? Whether we're talking about digital clash detection, whether it's handover documents that needs to happen, whether it's an asset information model that the client needs, that they want to run into the VMS system. So how are we going to do this better and faster? We have a couple of projects where our clients have come to us, and right now they're in trouble because they agreed to an asset information model, but they didn't realize what was going to go in there, and what was the effort that was going to go into delivering this asset information model. So it's really understanding that end and working it backwards and saying, how can we start capturing some of this data and using some of that data as early as possible in the process? And last but not least is operational excellence. As you start rolling out this digital transformation journey, you start capturing data. What's really, really nice is you start building up a history. And you can start doing metrics. You guys want to see some of the products earlier today. It says, oh, I've got now a history of how many RFIs is on a job, or how many issues are on a job. Can you imagine if you run 20 projects, 30 projects, and you can now say, typically, where are we getting RFIs? What's the area where we typically have RFIs? And I have data. Well, typically, how long does it take for an issue to be handled by this specific subcontractor. And I can start managing for that risk. You know, if I know that this subcontractor is faster than that one, it's not a gut feel, it's data. And you can start managing for the data. And you start managing on how profitable projects are. Because we all know that projects right now are being run on a knife's edge. You know, and if you can start predicting where trouble might be coming based on historical data, that just puts you in such a better position. So in essence, and I know much as a lot faster than the other guys, but we'll leave some space for questions, is beginning with the end in mind. Really look at where is it that you want to be in the next 5 years? Where is it that the company needs to be in order to still add value and have a competitive advantage over this competition before you start your digital journey? Don't buy the hype. So I know I'm guilty of it because I'm a software sales guy and a technology sales guy, and Warwick's guilty as we'll show up at your doorstep and go, look at the shiny new tool we got. You know, because that's how we get paid. But the end result was really important for us is that you guys succeed with it. And it's very important to say, well, I know that there's the shiny new tool and it can do X, Y, Z. How does that fit in with where we want to be? And do we need to change where we want to be? You know, I've had some architectural clients that's completely changed their business model where they say they don't want to be in the design business. They're going to do the construction drawings, and that's where they're going to make their money because their risk on the design side is just too much. And then I've got other clients that say that's only what we want to do, and we'll outsource that to those guys because I don't want to have a big drawing office. You know, so companies are changing their businesses, but it's really looking at where is it that you think you can add value and where you want to be, and then working it backwards instead of being reactive. Okay, oh, this project calls for a CDE, I'm going to go find one quickly. And it's being proactive with that. I think traditionally, what I've picked up, and I can be completely wrong, please correct me, a lot of the investments have been made based on project requirements. You know, I'm not going to implement this new piece of technology unless the project pays for it. You know? And that's the biggest difference between the mining industry and the architectural, the building industry. What we find with the mining guys is that they go, we need a competitive advantage, we're going to invest in technology to give us a competitive advantage moving forward. And they do that. Where I find in the building industry is the exact opposite way around. You're not going to invest unless the project pays for it. So that's why I said begin with the end in mind. Really look at what's happening in the next 5 years. You know, take your time. Look at what's, read some reports. I mean, they're available for free. McKinsey, EY, they all do lots of research in this field. And say, well, that's what's coming down the line. Like ISO, it's coming. We can't stop it. You know, what do I need to have in place in order to cope with that, or to take advantage of it, and then start your journey? Questions, guys?
Not all at once. No. Mr. Featherstone.
Yeah, no, I think just a comment. You know, like we're doing a project in Bangladesh, Dhaka. It's like a 30 kilometers long elevated viaduct where it's been 8 years in planning, and now they're building it. And suddenly the question is, oh, like what standards must be used for the as-builts? And now suddenly they want to bring in BIM, and it's like it's too late, you know. So I think, and then the question was, well, are there any standards for as-built
Yep.
or using BIM? And there's surprisingly little, as far as I'm aware. I mean, I've
Yep.
checked.
And I think that's what's exciting me about ISO 19650.
Yeah.
You know, because we had PAS 1192 in the UK, and a lot of ISO 19650 comes from PAS 1192, and ISO 19650 is global. It's really the first time that I understand, in my short time in the space, that there's some kind of agreement globally. Yes, there will be country-specific annexures going forward, but I think that makes it exciting because it makes the world really flat for us. We can really go and compete because all of a sudden it's not some new standard that you have to get used to. There is a standard with an annexure that everybody agrees on.
We're quite a long way off from that.
No, most
And
definitely.
the reason I say that is we're pretty much operating on the basis that for our US-based clients, we are practicing a BIM according their standards, and our UK and European clients, we are then using the BIM UK for it.
Yeah.
So at some stages, ISO's got to combine all of it.
And I think it's going to happen.
And it's coming, but
Yeah.
I think for us, the biggest obstacle in BIM is the input of data and where it comes from. And one essentially has to employ a specifications architect to get that information input into the project and the actual objects that you're going to then extract that COBE information from. And we don't practice COBE inside. We really don't have an understanding how COBE goes into an asset management and into a manufacturing environment. So that's why as site architects and engineers we tend to push that aside, use our own specifications. And then we'll turn around to the clients and say, but for proxy agreement, our deliverables are PDFs and DWGs. There's nothing about a handover of a BIM model or asset management. There's nothing about a BIM deliverable as an as-built environment. We need a push, and I remember 10 years ago, we sat with government officials, and there was a little bit of interest in BIM and what it could do. They were picking up from the UK. Our Department of Public Works started to say, we will mandate. And then when the lights went out, so did that.
You know, as you know, ISO 19650 has been accepted by the Bureau of Standards
Yeah.
through the facility management system, which is quite interesting. Yeah.
Just a quick one. I know it's oversimplification. It is ISO 19650. Is it millimeters or is it inches?
It actually doesn't go to that level. The first section, it really goes into establishing the way of information exchange
Okay.
and what's needed. There's typically company annexures that will be coming that will specify that. So, and they will say, well, you know, ISO 19650, this is the company annexure that will apply, and they will dictate that. The first part of ISO 19650 is really about who needs to give what information, how we're going to exchange information, are we going to have a CDE? That's really what the first part's about. And it's good to know that we started adopting it, so we're not behind the rest of the world with that. It's a bit discouraging to know that some of the other professional bodies didn't know what we were talking about after it was adopted, you know, but, you know, so is life. But it is coming. And you know, my viewpoint on this, and this is a personal viewpoint, is if you have any building that's got some kind of public liability to it, like an office building or you know, residential high-rise, something like that, it's probably going to be applied to that in the coming future. You know, housing and stuff like that might be completely different, but any of the sort of large public type of stuff, you will definitely see that coming through. And it's just being aware that it's there and being in front of the curve, you know, as it comes. As I said, one of my clients, they already implemented the first annexure of ISO on the projects that they are running in the Middle East, because they were forced to do so. They could not participate in the project unless they've done it. And it's being pushed quite hard at the moment.
What about the Omni clause and Union clause and those kind of things? Are they now falling apart? Is it part of a subsection of?
So if you look at, I actually should have Mahil in the room because he's the expert, him and Ahmed. But, you know, the whole process starts with an EIR, or an OIR actually, in the beginning. You know, and there they need to specify how they want the information and what information they want. Am I right, Matthew? You can jump in and correct me. But it really starts.
You have to explain it
Yeah.
as they are.
Yeah. You know, and that's where that sort of gets specified. You know, and gets taken from there. But just knowing that I'm supposed to ask for that or I'm supposed to get that, you know, and everybody
Does
is
the client
supposed.
know what they want?
Most of the times not.
Okay.
But
So then you propose.
you know,
Most of that information you're reliant on your manufacturers to provide. So a lot of your equipment items will either be populated with an Omni-class or a Uni-class.
Yeah.
And we've just got to trust that it's correct.
Yes.
We don't have the skill or knowledge to check that. And that's
So you buy that from the dealer.
download it from somewhere.
No, you don't know.
but I think in essence, just in closing, what I want to say, guys, it is important as you go down the journey is to find pilot projects and get quick wins and small wins quickly. and learn quickly. Because we have not had a project that has been the same as the previous project, because the people in the project change. You know, the clients change. But having learned the lessons, we can very quickly, every project we do is better than the project before, because that happens. Now, the software is expensive. You know, people's time is expensive. So you want to learn those lessons quickly so that you can get the most out of your project. Let's say we were fortunate during COVID that we learned stuff very quickly. But as guys are now going, okay, well, we've got the minimum viable product going, you know, I can do a clash detection online. What's next? Where do we take this next? And it is important that everything in the company aligns. We can't have, you know, the technologists wanted to take it this way and management still want to be on that side. It's just not going to work. You know, if your funds are going to dry up, you know, you'll have this thing called change exhaustion sitting into place. Anything else? Anything else you guys want to ask about the previous presentation? I think we're there.
Yeah, I think just to comment again, what you said about that going slowly is actually better than is actually the quicker way of doing it. I don't agree. I mean, I've done projects where some guy from overseas came and said, no, you guys need to implement this on this project. And it was an absolute utter disaster. Where people were like working late hours to try and fit this new system and suddenly learn this thing. And so, yeah, good point.
And again, just to reiterate, is also don't get analysis paralysis, as I would call it. You know, don't get stuck in planning. You know what the end goal is, and start small and learn. You know, and develop from there. But also don't expect everybody to do it all at the same time, because then you are going to get stuck. Cool. Anything about any of the other products you guys thought you guys wanted to ask a question with?
Can I just make a comment perhaps just around the issue of willingness and I think across the industry, and you know there's this whole debate that's raging as what role does the state play and versus what the market is looking for, and I think my comment really says that at the end of the day we're all working within the same industry, and that there's a role there for industry associations, professional bodies, to actually drive the proper agenda that then says, okay guys, this is a more sustainable way for us to work, and this is what we are then going to work toward as a framework. And in a sense, I see the whole industry as having been stuck to that analysis paralysis for the last 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a new discussion, you know, and it's incumbent upon the industry and all the practitioners to say, well, these are the tools, and let's have these forums that actually say, well, what are the best ways in which to actually put them to use?
Yeah.
And I think up until such time we achieve consensus, we're always going to keep getting thrown. You know, maybe in 5 years' time, you know, the market says, no, we're moving to a different, you know, standard. You know, then what do we do? So I think it's important that we decide and determine the trajectory that we are going to go along.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately we are the ones responsible for signing off on our work.
And I think it's also important that everybody in the value chain network gets involved. Because, you know, so often the guys managing that building are not involved in the design decisions. And by the time they get the building going, but why is that over there? It's not going to work. You know. And there's a very good book called The Owner's Dilemma. It's written by a professor, and I think it's from Princeton, where she talks about, you know, that developers worldwide has created these silos because they can get competitive pricing. They haven't developed a project team where they're going, okay, that's the guy who's going to be managing my building. He needs to be involved from the beginning, because these guys get appointed like, you know, at handover stage. And they created these silos, and while they getting a cheaper rate or a cheaper development, managing that volume becomes more expensive.
Exactly.
You're on the facility side. you
No,
know what.
exactly.
But that's why documentation is so important, and if you look at certain contracts, like I mentioned to yourself, the NEC contract, I think involved.
Spoke about it yesterday.
Yeah, I spoke about it yesterday. And that's why your works information needs to be done properly. In other words, everything detailed, not just saying, you are involved with installation of the air conditioning, thank you very much. But everything needs to be listed out. And that's where you get the whole coordination happening. And that's a big fault in the industry.
It is.
So, you know, I see the biggest problem with that is, and I think it's quite a unique South African, is that is where we want to be. And in order to be there, we've got to document the project before it gets to ground. And we work in a South African environment that is pouring concrete in that corner while I'm still trying to design. And it's absolutely crazy. We've got the tools to document an entire project, hand it over, and then just manage it. That's where we should be. Can't get things.
Sure. There you go. So I hope I gave you some food for thought. This presentation has also been recorded and we'll make it available to you guys. But go have a look at digital transformation and go look at some papers from McKinsey and those kind of guys. They're freely available. And they are industry agnostic. So, and what we found, sometimes you can learn something from the telecoms industry that can be applied to this industry, just by tweaking it slightly. And it's really, as you go down this journey, because it's big money we're talking about, you know, is make sure you have the right end of mind and you put in the training and the processes so you can get your ROI as fast as possible. Because we all know, I had a discussion with a client the other day, you can go into YouTube, you can go learn how to use any of the software on YouTube. You know? But unless you have that end goal, everybody's working towards that, and your training and your implementation goes towards that goal, you're going to have a mess. And you're going to sit a year later and going, you know, did I just spend a whole bunch of money in implementing something because I'm not seeing my return? So clarifying, you know, what is a return for me? What does that look like? What does success look like even before you start? I think is very, very important. Cool. Guys, thanks a lot.
Thank you. And we didn't mention product once.
Yeah, I mentioned some names, but I don't know.
Because that's going to